All right, Sarah, welcome to the hub. Super excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about everything and anything. So
Yeah, well, it's like I said, I feel like I'm on a famous streak right now. I interviewed Morgan Jones, she's famous. Now I'm interviewing you. You're famous. You're on the cover of Utah Business Magazine. I mean, like I Celeste was working at Qualtrics, she still is, and they were doing like a diversity and inclusion training, and
oh
I'm out walking, just I don't know if I was going to go play some video games or taking my own work break or
I was
whatever.
like, yeah, it was during the
day. don't tell my employer, but yeah, and I'm out walking, and all of a sudden I hear your voice, and I was like, oh, that's Sarah. And then I look, and there you are on the screen, talking about inclusion and diversity, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. She really is big time.
Not at all. That was a really great panel. I was happy to be a part of that. So yeah.
Well, afterwards, Celeste was like, Sarah's a rock star, and I was like, yeah.
Oh, that's so great.
Ensign War peeps,
Yeah. The best peeps ever.
They really are. So, but kind of taking a step back before we talk about, Black Lives Matter, social justice things, diversity and inclusion. Let's talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. So you created Melanin Squad. Like, what is it? Like, why did you create it? How was it getting started? Yeah, like what got you started?
Yeah, so Melanin Squad, I launched Melanin Squad October 2019. And I created it because our mission is create curated spaces and experiences and events for women of color living and thriving in Utah. And I've been in Utah for 8 years at that time. And I just was really struggling finding a place where I felt like I could be my authentic self, where I can see women that look like me, see speakers that look like me, that have the same shared experiences. And I really was missing that in my life. And I was like, we don't really have a group or an organization or a company that's creating events just for us and that have women that look like us speaking to us. And so I saw a need. And so I decided to create Melanin Squad. And it's been one of the best blessings in my life, but also it's really hard being an entrepreneur. And it's like really, especially when you don't have resources and you didn't go to school. Like I never thought I would ever be an entrepreneur. I went to school and got my master's in public administration and thought I'd be doing nonprofit work for the rest of my life. And being an entrepreneur hasn't been easy at all. And I've learned a lot on my own. It's a one-woman show. I do our marketing, I do our contacting our sponsors. And I just do everything. And so it's hard, but it's also a blessing. So,
yeah. Well, I think it's been cool seeing you kill it. I mean, like your website, like, the events, I've seen some of the flyers for the events, and like, yeah, it's, so I'm sure it's hard, but it's probably been pretty rewarding too, right? Like, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's been really rewarding. Selfishly, I think I just created it for myself because I get to be in a room full of women of color and I get to learn from them. And it's been one of the greatest. I have like instant friends, right? And it's just been really great. A lot of healing for me. Living in Utah is not the easiest. I finally found my community, but creating Melanin Squad has really helped me to really grow and to push me to do things I didn't think I could do, and be in a room and create things that are important to me and for others. And so create community. I never saw myself in that role. So.
Yeah. And I think that's important, like a community. So like, talk a little bit about like the community itself. Is it, for those that don't live in Utah or aren't familiar with Utah, like why is Utah, like, why was it tough? Why is it tough to live in Utah? Why has this need to create this community like been so valuable?
Yeah, Utah is predominantly white. I can't remember the exact percentage of minorities in Utah, but it's not very high. And so there's not a lot of, I've never had a Black boss or a BIPOC boss. I've never had a person of color as a boss or in supervision, like in the supervisory position. I've never seen that. I go in the grocery store, I don't really see a lot of people that look like me. And so that's the community that we are in. It has definitely changed since I've been here, like over the 10 years I've been here. But there's a lot of work we still need to do. And people keep moving here and being recruited, but they stay a year, people of color, and then they leave because there's no sense of community or culture. And so they just don't feel like there's a home here. And so I created Melanin Squad really to keep women of color here and to know that they have Melanin Squad, a community, automatically when they're here. And so yeah, Utah's not easy, but when you get your groove and find your community, it's a great place.
Yeah. Well, and you know, maybe you can elaborate, because it's not like people in Utah who are predominantly white. It's not, well, maybe they are. I mean, I'm sure there's always a few bad apples, but I feel like for the most part, they're pretty welcoming, nice. They might have a different culture, but I mean, it's not like they're like driving people away. I think it's more of just that lack of community, that when, you know, Black people, people of color come here, like you said, they're missing the lack of community, not so much that like people here are mean or, you know, unwelcome.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, it's just a lack of community and seeing people that look like you. That's important. That's so important to have people that look like you and that have shared experiences, because my white friend and I really great, but there's still something missing there, right? And there's not that shared experiences that we're going to have each and every day. And so, it's people are not driving. I mean, there's some, like you said, there's some bad apples, but it's just a sense of community, and having people that look like you is so important.
Yeah, I think, I mean, not to compare experiences, but I'm trying to, you know, think back of when maybe I was, I don't want to say a minority, but I grew up on the East Coast, and being LDS Mormon is not, it's not like Utah where like, you know, it's the predominant like religion around here. So like for me, like I think back of like when I'd go to like church activities or mutual and
or
like
EFY,
and I'd be surrounded by people who were like me, and man, like you clung tightly to those social like events. And you know, my sister and I, we loved going to stake dances, and you know stake dances are
they're so
there's something special. But I mean, it really wasn't about the dance, right? It was more just about going to be with people like you, and you know, having that sense of community. And you know, you talk about it as well, like, you know, at school, like, you know, I had friends, like I felt like I was well liked, maybe other people maybe not, I don't know, but I feel like, you know, I got along well, and like, but like you said, like, yeah, there wasn't you know, and part of it was just the standards that I held to, right? Like I wasn't going to go out drinking and smoking and partying. So like me, myself, I was kind of excluding myself a little bit. Like I wasn't totally involved in the community. But, you know, I feel like people generally were pretty good and like pretty welcoming. But there was a little difference just because of the standards that, you know, and the church culture and things like that. And so having the opportunity to go to church events, be with other LDS people was really, like you said, healing. It was great. It really was comforting.
Yeah, same. Like I had the same, I mean, I'm Black and LDS, and growing up in Florida, I didn't have a lot of LDS friends. And so when you go to those EFYs and those state conferences, you just feel like, oh my gosh, this is home. This is like everyone shares the same belief that I do and experience, and they get the same cultural jokes, and it's just great. So yeah.
I've always wondered, like, I think it's important, you know, and I look at like the history of like the church. I think it's interesting. Like the church in the early stages was the outcast, right? It was the minority. Like they were getting persecuted, right? Like driven out, killed, raped, like a lot of bad things. And they kind of like created their own community here in Utah. And, you know, I think it would happen with any group, like whether it's race, you know, sexual orientation, whatever the case might be. But as soon as you become the majority, right, you kind of forget. It's easy to forget about people who are on the minority of the group that you've created. And so like, I think that's always the challenge, is to like how do you make it feel safe, welcoming for those people that maybe aren't in the majority? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for sharing that. So like, what's the future of Melanin Squad look like? Like, are you gonna be on the cover of Forbes 30 under 30?
That's the hope. I want Salt Lake to be the hub, Utah to be the hub, but I want to have chapters around the nation of Melanin Squad. That's the goal. And grow this company. And I just know that it's needed everywhere. And there's other groups in other cities that do what Melanin Squad does, but don't do it like us. And I just feel like I can see it really growing, and that's the goal for expansion, and hopefully maybe be on Forbes. You never know.
Yeah, well, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, I look at like Utah, like Provo's growing quite a bit. Ogden's growing as well, and then in Salt Lake, it's exploding as well. I mean, most major employers are still in Salt Lake, but yeah, there's other employers elsewhere.
Yeah, so we shall see.
Well, best of luck. So a couple other entrepreneurship questions, like have you raised money? Have you been approached by venture capital firms? Have you thought about going that route? I know it's just you, so normally I'd ask how'd you find your business partner? But if it's just you, are you thinking of taking on like a partner in the future, or are you still just kind of wanting to run it yourself still?
So right now, it's all sponsorships. So I just really lean on corporate relationships, and that's how I fund our events mostly. But I want to be able to do this full time, because this is not my full-time job. I do want a business partner. I want to get an angel investor eventually. It's something I talked to someone last week about, and really creating a business plan that someone can really see my vision in the future of Melanin Squad, and something that someone would want to invest in. And so really working on that. And, Googling business plans, some of them are so long and complicated. And so really trying to understand what is needed is sometimes difficult for me. And so I was talking to someone yesterday that could help me really build on that and know where to look for angel investors and to really grow this business. And so I really do need help. I don't want to do this on my own. But I eventually, I would love a team, and that's the goal. So.
Well, I'm not an angel investor. I have worked for some VCs. So if you need help, now that I'm in Utah.
I know, right?
Glad to help in any way that I can. Okay, well, kind of switching gears a little bit. Okay. I want to kind of talk a little bit about events last summer. Black Lives Matter. Killing of George Floyd. I guess. I feel like there was lots of awareness raised, right? Lots of protests, lots of marches. I guess, what do you think, if you look at what happened last summer, and, not just George Floyd, right? There was other people that have been killed by police. Not to trivialize that. What do you think the successes of Black Lives Matter has been? And where do you think they've kind of fallen short?
Yeah, George Floyd was a catalyst to everything. I think that really woke up America, because there was Freddie Taylor, there was Sandra Bland, there's all these women and men that were killed, and I think George Floyd was a catalyst, and it has really, Black Lives Matter has brought an awareness to open America's eyes that, okay, what Black people have been saying for years and hundreds of years, they're right. That their experiences in America are difficult, and I think it's a tough question, because companies, to me, it was kind of frustrating too, because companies all of a sudden are just like, I need to hire
double the Black amount of VPs or something.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm just like, what? Why didn't you do that before? Why did a man have to be murdered on and everyone to see that video be circulated for you to know that how important that is. And I think that's what Black Lives Matter has done. I think they fell short of really sharing their mission and why it was created in the first place. We all know why it was created, but I think their branding has kind of fallen short on, and I think that's why some people see it in such a negative way, and not in the way as me as a Black person sees it, and why Black Lives Matter and the mission behind it. And I think they should have done better with their branding and their mission, and had kind of like a roadmap on where they're going and how this organization can continue. And I just hope, my fear is that it will fall short one day and that it will just end. The message will always, and that slogan, Black Lives Matter, will always live on, but how does the organization continue from here? I think they've raised a lot of money, but what have they done with that money? I don't, that's my biggest thing, is that I don't know. But I know the slogan is out there more than what they do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a nice, I don't want to say like it's a nice catchphrase that people repeat, but then they like just kind of go on with like their daily lives, like. Right.
And I think we have great, like we have like the chapters here, and they do great work, but I think the bigger organization in DC, I think if they branded differently or really made their mission clear or their message clear, I think more people would, really support and not see it in the way that it is seen in the media. So.
Yeah. Well, I would love to ask like two questions. So like how do you see Black Lives Matter? Like what is the message that really resonates with you?
Message that really resonates with me is, one thing I love about Black Lives Matter is just the sense of community and how important it is to see Black people as, it's a tough question. I'm trying to think. Just the awareness that we exist, that there's struggles, but we are human beings at the end of the day. And I think that what really resonates with me. And I think I'm drawing a blank. I can't even think.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I can say, that it's just the importance that our life matters, and it should matter, and it should have always mattered. And why didn't it matter? Because I know my life matters, my brother's life matters, my mom's life matters, my friends' lives matter. I think that's what really resonates with me.
Yeah, I think that that should have universal appeal, right? Like,
yeah,
like I mean, there's always going to be a couple of crazies, I guess you could
right.
say. But for most people, it's like, yeah, of course, like, yeah. Or
it's like really simple, like our life matters, like, and then we've been trying to say that for the longest time and bring awareness to what's happening in our community, and the injustices that happen in our community, and we just want our life to matter to you and at the end of the day. So
well, and you do bring up a good point, because I mean, any organization is going to try and define their message, but then other people will try and define it for them. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, especially, after a while, people are like, oh, Black Lives Matter is like, they just want to redistribute wealth. They're like, they want equality of outcomes, and like, maybe they do. Like, I haven't really read up as much on as well, but like, they started painting it with all these different strokes that maybe lost the central message that you were trying to say. And so it's, maybe it's, I don't see it like, I don't see why people, I guess, can't be like, hey, look, like the main message is like, hey, just because they're Black, like their life matters. They have struggles. Maybe like their life is different, but like their life matters. They, they have some things that, maybe you don't experience, but like their life matters. And like, we should like make them feel welcome and included, and like, we should hear them out, instead of, I mean, like, there's other parts of the organization that like once, like, very different things, slavery, reparations, like, equality of wealth. Like, yeah, you know, it's not just one person running the show. There's lots of different people. So like find the message that, you know, the central message and like what works best. And like the other stuff is kind of like, yeah, I mean, for me, I don't think equality of outcomes is something that we want, but you know, that's a different topic to be debated kind of thing. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in reparations. I definitely believe in that. I don't know how it would be done or where those resources would come from, but I definitely believe in that. But to me, I don't call myself an activist, but I just know that my life matters and I want everyone to be seen and heard, especially marginalized communities. And I think people, like you said, people are missing the simple message that our life matters. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all I want people to know and care about and be aware of. So yeah.
It is interesting. A lot of money has been raised for Black Lives Matter, and it is just, like you said, a lot of corporations have gotten behind it, and which, you know, is great to allow voices to be heard. But it, like you said, it's kind of like, wait, like,
where have you been?
Where did all this money come from, and why did we need something bad to happen before, you know, like, right. Yeah. So it's just interesting.
Yeah.
I have a theory about why it seems like Blacks and the police interact so much, and why there's always, like, you know, anytime someone gets shot from the police, it's like, you know, it always seems to be like a person of color. But I don't want to bore audiences with my theory. I mean, if you're curious to hear it, happy to share. But yeah, it's a theory. I don't really have any like proof behind it.
Okay.
So, but yeah. So if you want me to share, I will. But it's, you know, I don't want to. I'm happy to go to the next topic of conversation, which I want to discuss with you, is social justice. So.
Yeah, let's just go to social justice.
Okay, great. So it's kind of been a new term. Well, maybe not a new term.
Not really, but it's more known to a wider audience now. So.
Yeah, maybe that's a good way to put it. So can you describe like what is social justice? What is it like? What's its goal?
Its goal is just access to opportunities and equity when it comes to healthcare, economics, equity when it comes to our prison system. It's just access to opportunities that mostly marginalized communities are affected by. So
that's pretty simple right there.
Yeah. I like to say everything simple, like don't like to be complicated at all.
Yeah. So equality of like access, you mean like for like healthcare, like you're going to treat a Black person the same way that you treat a white person?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess, is there, why do you think it's been such a bigger part of the conversation now? Like, why do you think more people are aware of it?
I think a lot of people are just, there's so many news terms popping off now and like coming popular. And I think people are just reading more and understanding the importance of, or seeing that there's injustices within our systems and in our country. And I think they're now like, okay, this is, because the social justice has always been around. The civil rights movement, the LGBTQ movement, I can't think of the word, New York on the road. But there's always been movements. There's always been social justice movements. And I think it's just like BLM, it's just coming, people are more aware now and trying to be more thoughtful throughout their day on how they can make our world a better place and be there for their neighbor. And so I think it's just, there's so many new terms, there's so many new things. I think people are just trying to figure out what makes sense to them and what they understand of what social justice is. Yeah. Because everyone has their own definition of what social justice is. Because what I say could be different from somebody else. So.
Interesting. So you said that you weren't an activist. How come you're not an activist?
I think that word is thrown around too loosely. I don't protest. I don't outwardly say how I feel about everything. I'm not, I post a lot on my social media platforms of what I believe and what I want to see changed, but I don't like to call myself activist because I'm not on the front lines every day. And what I'm doing with Melanin Squad is I don't call it activism. And so I'm careful with that word because I look at people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X or Brittany Packnett as activists. I am not an activist. I feel like that word is so, I never call myself that. I just post what I feel and what I want to see changed. And so, yeah.
I definitely do feel like it's thrown around a little loosely. Like, I post something about, I don't know, $15 minimum wage or, get rid of private prisons or whatever the case might be. And then, people I feel like are like, oh, I'm an activist now. I posted something on social media and I'm like, well,
yeah, you think more than that, right? You have to there's so much more than posting into social media. And I post a lot. I just want people to be aware and learn something. If they can learn something new that day from me, that's great. If they don't, they can skip through all that stuff. I post a lot, but I'm no activist. I feel like that word is, if you're in the trenches and on the front lines, going to the Capitol and doing that work, I think that's what an activist to me is. And speaking outwardly all the time, that's a true activist. But yeah, that word it's given out to people too freely now. So, yeah.
Well, I think you're a rock star. And if I like, when I like, I don't like to put labels on people. I try to get to know them. But like, for me, like, when I think, I'm like, Sarah, oh no, she's entrepreneur. Like, she's created business. Like, she's created something that that solves a need. People really like it. They respond to it. I haven't been to any of the events, but like, for me, like, I see the positivity and like the interaction and the community that's built. And for me, I'm like, yeah, no, like, she's making things happen. That's kind of the thing that I think of.
When I saw the word in the question, I was like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I never called myself that, but maybe I am, but I don't know.
You totally are. Like, you create, like, there was a need, you saw the need and you created a service that, to put it in like purely like economical terms, that's satisfying the need. And whether it was selfish, you wanted it, like, that doesn't matter. Like, yeah, that's what I think of. I'm like, oh yeah, she's an entrepreneur.
So. Okay. Well, I'm glad. That's a good label.
No, yeah, it's great. I'm trying to think of, I guess, is there anything else with regards to, kind of wrapping up here, like anything else with like BLM, social justice, this racism, what would be the message that you'd want to share with people that are going to listen to the podcast and others? Like, what's the message that you'd really want to share with them?
Just a time to learn on both sides. I think it's just a time to listen to each other, and and just read and surround yourself with people that don't look like you or don't think like you, have different belief systems than you. I think that's so important. I have friends that are Republican, and that was hard for me last year, and something I had to learn, but I still see them as the person that I love, and they love me. And I learned from them too. And a lot of my friends are different sexual orientation. I just believe in surrounding yourself with people that don't live like you or believe in what you believe every single day. And I breathe and I drink and I live social justice and Black Lives Matter, and creating a sense of community and making people especially marginalized groups, make sure that they're seen and heard. And so I think it's just so important that we just surround ourselves with people that don't think like us, because we won't learn or grow. And then this country won't get better if we don't come together in that way. I truly believe that I'm not a confrontational person. On my social media platform, I believe in celebrating Blackness and Black girl joy and Black boy joy. That's just my whole platform. I'm not, I don't like to argue with people. I don't talk about politics on my page. I mean, you basically, from what you see on my page, you can assume what I believe in, and who I voted for or what I believe in every day. But I just believe that we have to learn from each other and read books that we might make us angry, and we have to learn from that. And so I just think it's important that we become more aware of each other and the struggles that we experience. So
yeah, I think it's super important to to learn, to give yourself an opportunity to interact. And I mean, I think you shared this quote when you were on Culture X I ever heard, is like, racism isn't taught, or it's just something like racism isn't taught, but it's like caught in like media, or like just caught like people around you, or whatever the case might be. I don't want to dive into like what's racism, what's not, but like I like that idea of like, for me, of like, hey, maybe there's some stereotypes that I've like, maybe because I watch a movie or something, or like there's a stereotype that I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's like this person's gonna act like this because this is the stereotype, and like most of the times, like you don't have enough information, but I think the opportunity is presented to us, especially with like technology and things like that, is like, okay, maybe you do have the opportunity to learn a little bit more rather than just relying on a stereotype or an assumption that may or may not be true.
Right. Yeah, we all have our biases, right? I am all about social justice and learning, but there's so much more I don't know. There's so much things that I'm still learning every single day. And so we all have our biases, and that's something that people need to realize,
Yeah, exactly. And it's opportunity to learn. And like, if you come to different conclusions, then like, hey, like that was part of your learning process. Like, so yeah, that's just some things that I've thought of, and like, I agree with like totally. Like it's a good time to learn.
It's a good time to learn. I mean, it's quarantine. I mean, still, or not really quarantine, but we're living through a pandemic still, and it's a perfect time to like pick up some books or watch some shows that you never would have watched before, and just learn from each other. So connect.
Totally. Well, Sarah, thanks for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate sharing your experience, letting me interview someone famous. Like thank
you. Not at all. Thanks for having me on, and you had some tough questions, Matt. Well, you were blank. I was like prepared for the other one. That was tough, but that was great. That was great.
Well, I hopefully it was. I mean, I didn't go to school for broadcast journalism. I'm just picking this up on the fly too. So like for me, I'm hoping I try to get to ask questions that people like, that really like get to understand how people think and like really get to the issue, but also it doesn't, is like not confrontational, and it's not like like it gives people an opportunity to speak and be like, no, this is like what I believe and this is why I believe it. And then I hopefully let listeners, readers draw their own conclusions and say like, yeah, no, I could see that, or like, nah, that's a bit of a stretch. So
yeah, you would have fooled me. I was like, dang, Matt went to a journalism school rather than MBA. Like he has his master's in journalism. You did a great job.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's been a good learning experience, right? And I think this is why, like, we're always encouraged to go out and do stuff, is like, in the doing, you'll pick up things, you'll learn, you'll get better at it. You might start off not so great, but hey, if you persistence, if you keep going, like, it can, hopefully it pays off. So
no, that was awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming on. And let me know if you want any help with the business plan or anything like that. We're in Utah, so yeah, let me know.
I'm glad I know you're in Utah now. So yeah, cool. I can bug you now.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you.
Okay, bye, Matt.